Welcome to Off Syllabus with Manny, where we talk about the hardest parts of teaching, the ones that do not make it to the syllabus. Today, we want to continue exploring frameworks and how we can use them to navigate conversations in the classroom, especially tough conversations. Again, I with Janett Cordovés, and she will continue to talk about the different frameworks. Last time, we talked about values-based framework for dialogue. But today we're going to expand beyond that.
So we spent a little bit of time on values-based leadership, but there's a ton others, right? Like it depends on what the goal of the work is. So in some of the spaces that I've worked in, it's been about peace building. In some of the work, it's about reconciliation and healing and creating healing circles. And others, it's about ethical listening. And others, it's about workforce development. And so in my past role, it was focused on pluralism. And so it really depends, right? And now we have a field that has emerged around bridge building, right? And so these frameworks can be used in such different ways, and they're all different tools. I stated earlier in our conversation that some of us really default to debate. And if you ask students like which framework they appreciate more, it's debate, but it's the one that they've seen the most. Right. And that's helpful for lots of reasons. And so is deliberation. A lot of the work that I do at CNS and elsewhere is about like deep listening and creating mutual trust and ensuring that people can thrive together. And so even though I'm able to facilitate, conversations that are focused on debate and move people towards a deliberative process, I like to stay in the space of pluralism and ethical listening.
So let's say I'm going to change the scenario to something different. So let's say you are teaching a class, and I know you have teaching experience. And you're in the class and you're talking, and then you ask a question, and you feel like students just feel stuck. Like the environment doesn't feel fluid, it feels tense, people feel somewhat disconnected. If you had to like think and try to find some sort of strategy or framework, where does your mind goes in this scenario?
Yeah. This is why it's so important to do this muscle work before you're in the situation, right? And why it's so important to practice so that you have your one or two or three default responses ready to use. And you don't want to use them for the first time in the situation. You want to use them for the first time with your colleagues and your peers and practice it and get better at it and sound more confident in it. But some that come like that I have stored up of like my three that I would kind of share with everyone. It's like we're stuck where the conversation just went a different way. And you're like, oh, what's going on? I would name it, right? Like naming the moment has such an ability to kind of break the energy that's going on in the room and allow for like pause and reflection. So something like, I'm not sure I understand what's unfolding. Can someone elaborate or fill me in? Because sometimes as the facilitator, the faculty member, the vice president of student affairs, you're thinking about something else and you're leading a conversation and you have no idea what has happened that's on the table. Like you just don't know.
Yes.
Questions like, please tell me more about that. Like someone said something that was cutting and maybe the students responded, eh? And you're like, oh, can you tell me more about that? Like, what does that actually mean? Because sometimes we don't have the language or the jargon, right? We're a little bit removed. You can also say things like, I'm sensing a break in the communication. Can we just sit with this moment sit with this moment for a minute? Like, it's okay to sit in the discomfort. It's okay to sit in the silence. And it's very important to not brush it off because something is happening that can help really bring solidarity to the group and strengthen the group, or something that can create a divide in the group. So you can just say something like, I'm sensing a break in communication. I think I missed something. Let's just sit with this for a moment. Let's gather ourselves. I'll give you a minute and hold that minute and then ask, like, what is actually unfolding?
Yeah.
Right? Like
And like
naming what's happening.
also right, and it's hard to hold a minute. So think about things you can do, like drink water, walk around, write something. Because to me, it was very difficult to hold that 1 minute because you're in front of everybody, so you feel awkward. So find a strategy that will allow you to count for that minute.
That's amazing. You know, in the virtual space, they say hold silence for 6 breaths. So
Oh,
that's
really?
another thing to practice. So if you're teaching or you're leading a town hall or something like that, and you're in the virtual space, hold 6 breaths.
Nice.
The second tool that I like to keep in the back pocket is returning to my agreements. So this is something that I do when I'm facilitating. This is something that I do in the classroom. This is something that I do when I'm facilitating in my city, like just with community leaders. And it's creating a space with them, co-creating the agreements of like I said before, maybe not interrupting, right? Like that's something that's very important to me, or using I statements, or everyone will speak one time before you speak a second time, right? Like the Supreme Court ruling, right? So you create that space, and then as the faculty member and the leader in the classroom in particular, you could say, you know, I just want to hold us up for a moment. It seems like we've flipped on one of these. I think I saw you interrupting. Let's just hold for a second. Please finish your thought. And you need to do that from the beginning and always, so that you're not isolating students, but coming back to the agreements that you've co-created as a class, as a community, is such a helpful tool. And the last thing that I'll say is taking a breath. Like, take a breath, and that could also be a part of the agreements. Like, take a breath before you respond. Take a breath before you raise your hand, right? Like, just take a breath. It helps slow down and ensure that you're having like reflection a part of your coursework or your meeting. You know, if you're talking about like the presidents having their board meeting or something like that, where you can write down and journal your response to it, right? So like we're talking about strategic planning, right? It's like instead of just talking like in first draft or the first thing that comes to mind, take a minute, reflect and say, you know, it's so important for our strategic plan to align towards values of equity and integrity, right? And so
Yeah.
that just helps slow down what could be unfolding for people. So those are three that are like kind of my go-tos. And we should all have them, because this
I know.
happens in the grocery store, this happens at the coffee shop, this happens in your house, this happens in the classroom, everywhere. And so we don't want to shy away from difficult conversations. I mean, they make life beautiful, and this happens in our jobs. And
Yes.
we should have a few tools ready for that type of engagement.
Yeah, I feel like we live in such a siloed environment, and if we avoid these type of conversations, we're just building more silos between each other, and we don't want that. We want to keep building community. I would say something important to know is like we actually have an episode on agreements. So if you want to learn more about agreements, we have an episode for that. So stay tuned to listen more about how you can create classroom agreements. Something that I find very interesting, and I want to ask you about this, is as we talk about how this is important beyond the classroom, beyond your professional career, it's also important for the students to develop those tools. How do you inform students about this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing this, so they can also add that to their toolkit?
Yeah. I think that's also so important to include in the syllabi. But it's also a tool that provides like some certainty of what the learning is going to be. And so something like around learning outcomes or revisiting the learning outcome for that day. Like these are the 5 that are in your syllabus, but today we're really going to focus on this, or tomorrow's assignment is going to really focus on this, that like this is coming, because some students and some people just getting anxious about the uncertainty of like what is coming, and that doesn't allow them to come really prepared to a tumultuous topic, because they're just so anxious that they're going to be cut off, right? Or their peers are going to judge them, or something like that. So I think ensuring like providing a pathway, I think is really helpful for students. But then also when you bring in you know professionals from the field, right? So, like, if you bring in the Air Force, or you bring someone from your business chambers, or you bring somebody from your entrepreneurial or leadership program to talk about working across differences on teams, how to collaborate and problem solve. Like these are true skill sets that are needed in the workforce. Um, and or bring in like art or poetry or music, right? That people can respond to. So instead of it just laying flat, like this is only in the classroom, making sure that we're connecting it to how these skill sets help you to whatever is next for you. If that's, I don't know, being a pastor and a church leader, if that's running a nonprofit, if that's running your own company, right? Like being able to listen and hear what people are saying, paraphrasing and really engaging them in the values that are important to them, make you a better leader in whatever avenue you decide to continue your life in, from volunteering to full-time work to entrepreneurial to innovator. You need to be able to engage people. And the United States is one of the most diverse democracies in the world. And if you go globally, that even expands your experience of the religious beliefs, the political beliefs, the social beliefs that you need to integrate and welcome and learn to navigate successfully uh, on your team so that you can be successful and impactful in the things that you care about.
Yeah, as like people get prepared to engage in these conversations and embrace civil dialogue, is there anything else that faculty should be considering on thinking about maybe putting into their beginners dialogue like toolbox for them to have to
Oh,
prepare?
yeah. Well, I think at the beginning, or even at the beginning of the course, or at the beginning of the year, I think it's really important for people to slow down and create a sense of like community and space and like a really I don't know, a certain type of environment that allows for meaning making and purpose, right? So like one of the things, like going around, if you have a small class, asking your students a question, like something like what's the most recent book that you read, and what from it is still resonating from you, right? And just kind of going around having everybody say their name. All these little things can start to create a space. If you're in the digital world, something around like, something fun, like, if you were going to, present in front of 1,000 people, like, what would be your walk-up song and why? Or, like, and what would be your hype song and why? And I think with faculty, you could use different things like that, like, you had the summer off or you're working on your research, like, what is it? Like, bring some of that, hold space in any, like, meeting, in any classroom, in any lecture, because it's only going to strengthen the bonds, right? You can even do that values exercise that I talked about. You can do a pair and share of like listening and supporting, right? Of just even asking like what is taking up space in your mind today?
Mhm.
I mean, that conversation can go in so many directions, but you get to know what your colleague has just walked into the room with. They're thinking of their son or daughter's like college and dropping them off and the expenses, right? And they just went from full-time to part-time and the impact that that's having on their house. And they're just returned back to work after a decade out of being in the university, and they were in the business space and they're transitioning and trying to figure, and you get to really know people and what they're thinking about, and that just makes a huge impact on any team and any classroom.
Perfect. So thank you for sharing. So big thanks to Janett for sharing the frameworks and all your knowledge about how to navigate tough conversations. If you are ready to start, really just pick a framework and practice. Like Janett mentioned this before, talk to a colleague, talk to a friend, and practice. Because the more you practice, the better you will be when you have to face this like in real time. For more resources, check the information below. And remember, teaching goes beyond what's on the syllabus. So thank you.